Okay, so this is the start of Unit 5. It's pretty much Unit 4. It's just we're going to kind of go a little bit deeper into the slope-intercept form and looking at equations more than we did in the last unit. So on these, we're going to be looking at lines, tables, and equations, and we're going to write out the slope-intercept form, which remember is y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope, and we are going to use that slope formula again, just like we did in Unit 4. And remember, the slope formula looks like this. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And your b is the y-intercept. So when we look at this first table, and I printed this from Schoology, so it looks a little bizarre, but we're going to do the same thing. It's the same table that's on the worksheet. We're going to find the slope first because I want to find 0 on the x side of the table to be able to find my y-intercept, and since I don't see that, I have to use the slope. So I have to find the slope first in this case. I'm going to use these two pairs because they're all positive numbers, and I'm going to go ahead and label them x and y, x and y. This will be my 1s, this will be my 2s. So I'm going to use the formula, my slope formula, and I'm going to plug these numbers in. So I've got y2, which is 56, minus y1, 24, on top of x2 minus x1, 7 minus 3. So 56 minus 24 is 32, and 7 minus 3 is 4. And so when I divide those two, I get 8. Okay, so I have a slope of 8, and so what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to kind of recreate the table over here, and I have a -1, so that would be the closest thing I have to 0, which is where I want to end up on the x side of a table. So to get to 0, I would have to add 1. Okay, so that means I'm going to be adding on the other side as well. So I'm going to add the slope that we got over here, and -8 plus 8 gives me 0. Okay, so we've got our slope, we've got our y-intercept. Now we have to plug all of that in to your equation. So it should look like y equals mx, because m is the slope, plus, and since it's 0, you can write that out, or you'll also see it just written 8x. I meant to put x instead of m, so sorry, up here. So that should be an x, I'm sorry. 8x plus 0, or y equals 8x, same thing. Okay, question 2, same thing. On this one though, where I look to find the x value of 0, across from that is my y-intercept, and so I have my y-intercept, or the b. So I'm good on that. And just as a refresher, I'm going to put this up here so we remember how our answer is supposed to look. Okay, and I'm going to pick these bottom two because they're all positive numbers, a little bit easier to work with. So I've got x and y, my 1s and my 2s. Then I'm going to use the slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So y2 was 31.5 minus y1 and x2 minus x1. So 31.5 minus 17.5 is 14. And then 9 minus 5 is 4. When I divide those two, I get 3.5. Okay, so this is your m, or your slope, and your y-intercept, or b, is right there. So I've got y equals My m, or my slope, is 3.5x. And again, you can have plus 0, or it could also be just 3.5. On here, since we're looking for, it's a drop down on Schoology, so when you answer, you're going to want to make sure that you point out that the y is 0. Next one, same thing. We want our slope and our y-intercept. They didn't give us the y-intercept, so you're going to have to find your slope first. x1, y1, x2, y2, 78 minus 26, 12 minus 4. So for my slope, 78 minus 26 is 52. 12 minus 4 is 8. So I get 6.5. So here's the thing with the y-intercept. I always recreate the table a little bit. And I'm going to start with the 4 since that's the lowest number we have. That's the closest to 0. So I've got 4 and 26, and I need to get all the way back to 0. I need to get where x is 0. So that means since I'm going back, I'm going to be subtracting 6.5 each time. And you're going to work your way back until you get to 0. So 26 minus 6.5 is 19.5. Okay, and then you're going to subtract 6.5 again. And you're going to keep going until you get here, across from the 0. Same thing on this one. It's a little bit easier since you're closer to 0, so you'll just have to go backwards one time. So whenever you get your slope, when you use your formula, you're just going to subtract that slope, whatever you get, one time. Okay? And this one, a little bit easier. They gave you the y-intercept, which is your b. And then use whichever ones you want. Probably these two is what I would use into your slope formula. So I've got x and y, x1 and y1, x2, y2. Okay, on these, calculate the slope and the y-intercept. They gave you the equation. The only thing you have to remember is that m, or the number that's right next to the x, is your slope. And b, the number that's added or subtracted on, is your y-intercept. So in this case, this is your slope, and all the answer choices are in decimals, so you would have to divide that. So 11 divided by 5 is 2.2. And your y-intercept, remember, you have to look for the sign that comes right before the number. So negative 4.5 is your y-intercept. And on here, same thing. Remember, this is your slope, the one that's next to the x, and your y-intercept. On this one, I've got 5x, so I know that my slope is 5. And then there's nothing that comes after that. So if there's nothing that comes after, that's the same as if it had said plus 0. So your y-intercept is 0 on that one. And this one caused a lot of confusion. Y equals x minus 10. So we know that slope is whatever comes right before the x. In this case, there's nothing there, but there is an x there. So you need to imagine a 1 in front of that, because there is one x there. Sometimes math is lazy and they just don't put the number there. So you have your slope and your y-intercept. Same thing, you've got your slope and your y-intercept. On these, slope-intercept form from a graph. So first thing I want to find is the y-intercept. So it crosses at 2. So if this is my format, I already know that this is plus 2 because it's a positive 2. So now I need to find my slope that's going to go next to the x. So I can use that point, 0, 2. And it's super hard to see, but I think this is a point. It's super hard to see on here, but I think it's 8 and 6. So I'm going to label these XY, XY, 1 and 2. So I'm going to say 6 minus 2, because those are my Y's, and then 8 minus 0. So 6 minus 2 is 4, 8 minus 0 is 8. 4 eighths will reduce down to 1/2, and looking at these answer choices, they're wanting in decimal. So 1/2 in decimal form is 0.5. Okay, those are the same. Same thing on this one, my y-intercept, it crosses at the origin, so 0, 0, so plus 0. The points we have, I would say we can use that one. And honestly, you can use 0, 0. It confuses people, but you can use it. So let's use 3 and 6 and 0, 0. Why not? And we've got x and y, 1s, 2s. Probably should have done that backwards, but here we are. It's okay. I already did it. So 0 minus 6, and then 0 minus 3. Ugh, this is icky. Negative 6 divided by negative 3 is positive 2. So your slope is 2. Y-intercept is 0. Okay, on this one, your y-intercept is all the way down here. It's at negative 3. So when we're filling out our equation, we already have the b. And y equals something x minus 3. So let's use that point, 0, negative 3. And we can use, oh my gosh, it's even worse on this. I think that's a point. So I think we have negative 2 and 1. Yikes. X, y, x, y. These can be my 1s and these can be my 2s. I'm just going to kind of set it up and leave you to solve it. Minus negative 2 on that bottom part. Okay, this one's pretty nice. Your y-intercept falls between negative 1 and negative 2. So that's negative 1.5. And then use the 2 points they gave you to find the slope. Use your formula and find your slope. Same thing on this one. Your y-intercept is at 3. And if you want to, you could use that point. And it crosses right here too, and we can use that point also. So that would be 6 and 0. So your b here is 3. Following numbers in ascending order, remember that means least to greatest. So if you have negative numbers, the bigger the negative, the smaller it is. And those square roots, if you have a calculator, remember you hit the blue second button and the x squared looking button. But turn them all into decimals, solve for them. So like negative square root of 2 is negative 1.41. The square root of 5 is 2.23. And 13/4 is 3.25. Okay? If it helps, line up your decimals, add decimals if you need to. And place them in order from least to greatest, smallest to biggest. So I'm going to add some decimals there. Or zeros, I should say. Same idea, turn these 2 into decimals just by dividing them, and greatest to least, so biggest to smallest. And then you got some true or false. M and K both stand for slope. I don't know if it was covered in the notes. I'm not sure. But M, we know, stands for slope, and our y equals mx plus b. But there's also a formula that looks like this, and a lot of times they use the words constant of proportionality or constant rate of change. And that's what the K means, but it's the same. It's all slope. That means M is slope, K is slope. They use so many different words for slope, but it's the same. If there isn't a number in front of the x, then the slope is 0, true or false. If there isn't a number in front of the x, then the slope is 0. So think about that. If there's no number in front of the x, but there is an x on the paper, how many x's are on the paper? Last one, if there isn't a number for the y-intercept, then the y-intercept is 0. True or false?